The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Seat Giant, Kayvon Webster's LA Food Truck Vibe 305, and of course, Rams On Demand. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle to the end zone. Whoa. Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
It picks. Nickel Roby Coleman
throws. End zone caught. Touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebu Khan. Picked off. Marcus Peters. Strutting his stump. Mark Barron, the last 4 weeks, has been a Pro Bowler. He picked off Dak Prescott into Seattle territory, into the clear. 30, 20, Farrell Cooper 10. Farrell Cooper at the goal line.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand.
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown, LA!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 134. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. I'm joined here by my buddy, Joe Curley, and we're here to bring you a podcast after, unfortunately, the Rams lost to the Packers, but Rams fans got good news after the Rams actually were able to promote Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, the most hyped fifth rounder I've ever seen, from the from the PUP list, and he is in fact going to hit the active roster. So before we get into it, be sure to subscribe and review on iTunes. We're all over the place. We actually just got picked up by an online radio station. So I did drop that on Twitter, so you can check that out, but we're kind of spreading, so you can find us anywhere. With that being said, also before we get into it, I'm going to be doing a giveaway pretty soon, so be sure to subscribe, review, and follow on Twitter, like on Facebook to participate. Now, we can talk about the game. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it. I know how hard it is. I think we both realize how hard it is to really coordinate when we're living such busy lives and we're on a 3-hour time difference.
Wait a second. Are you saying this because you just listened to me, one, do the dinner dishes, and two, chase my 5-year-old around the house trying to get him in his room for bedtime while you were waiting on the East Coast past 11 o'clock on the East Coast to record with me? Is that what you mean?
I mean, maybe. Yeah, you know, we both understand each other.
We reward your patience tonight. That's my goal.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it, though. I mean, that it goes without saying, but I always want to say it. So,
I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, you know it. So, the Rams fell in New Orleans 45-35. They lost their first game of the season. And, I mean, you know, they lose by 10. But that game, well, I mean, even a Rams fan, you know, I know they lose, but you can't complain about them. I mean, Joe, maybe I'm wrong by thinking this, but they were down 35-14. This was looking like another blowout at the hands of Sean Payton, running up the score. Same thing we saw Jared Goff's rookie year. And, you know, after the Rams started off strong, it was looking like one of those games. But then things turned around. The Rams actually came all the way back, made it 35-35, and, you know, unfortunately weren't able to get the job done. But, I mean, wouldn't I, as a Rams fan, take away, you know, this is more good than bad? Because, one, you lost to the second best team in the NFL, who now you could argue is the best team in the NFL. 2, you lost on the road to, again, the second best team in the NFL. 3, you're without your best cornerback, and you're playing with, I mean, really, the secondary is not playing all that well, and you were still in it. 4, there were no sacks. The pressure generated, I mean, they were getting home, but they weren't getting home consistently, and Breeze is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's going to make you pay. Number 5, Michael Thomas. I mean, I know, people are going to point at the finger at Marcus Peters, but I don't care who you put on Michael Thomas in this game. He played the best game of his career. And they only got 1 touchdown out of it, but he had over 200 yards, and that's another thing. And also, I'll say this right now, I thought this was the worst schemed game by Wade Phillips. So you did, all of this, being said, you still had a chance. You did not play your best game against one of the best opponents on your schedule, maybe the best on your schedule, and you still had a chance on the road, hostile environment. This isn't like playing at, the soccer stadium that the Chargers play at. Like, the Saints bring a crowd. I mean, that dome gets rocking. And, talking about the dome getting rocking, I mean, the Rams already had their backs against the wall as far as crowd is concerned when they let Alvin Kamara run all over them for 3 touchdowns. I mean, you knew it was going to be a dogfight. So I guess, as I continue to go off on this tangent, Joe, I would take away more good than bad from this game. And call me crazy, but that's how I feel. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's certainly within your rights to do so. I mean, it's certainly set up as the toughest game on the schedule for the entire season. Going into the Superdome is probably the toughest place, with Drew Brees at quarterback, probably the toughest place to play in football. It's just a tremendous home field environment. Not only do they a really good job of getting loud when you're on offense, but they do a tremendous job of being quiet when their team has the ball. They really it is ever since Brees has been down there. It probably is the toughest place to try to go win a game. And so I didn't honestly, even though the line crept from the Rams being a rare underdog to what they were -2 at kickoff, something like that. This was maybe the one game that I wasn't confident about, that I thought they had a real chance. This was the game you had circled as the loss. And I will say that it's probably better for them to get the whole, at 8-0, you made it through halfway through the schedule. It's probably better to get that loss out of the way and not have to worry about perfect season talk. And I will say one thing that I do believe in football is that you learn more from a loss than a win. You learn, you get your team's attention more. I do think ultimately the loss has some positive effect on the Rams season, simply because it'll rein in, some members of that roster. It'll check, certainly Marcus Peters had a humbling afternoon. Other people, Tyler Higbee had a humbling afternoon. A lot of members of that defensive line had or defensive front had a humbling afternoon. So I think, ultimately, I think it's probably a net positive for the season. The one downside, which is enormous, huge downside, isn't just the loss. It's the fact that you lose the tiebreaker to the Saints. So you're in a position now where you really have to win out. To make, you do not want to have to go back there in January. So you have to sell out. You have to do everything that you can to finish above that team in the standings, because I think I'd be pretty confident of this team winning the rematch if it's in LA, and I'd be pretty pessimistic if they had to go back there. So I think those are the ramifications of this performance, of this loss. But I will say that simply digging out of a 21-point hole in that environment, doing what they did to that offense for much of this. The defense is getting crucified. Marcus Peters is getting crucified. But what they did defensively for almost the entire second half was very impressive. Maybe the Saints had a lot to do with that, but I overall I think I was tremendously impressed by by the comeback, especially when the wind was in their face. Not only are they on the road against a tough team with one of the best offensive lines in football, one of the best, maybe the best defensive rush defense in football, but really when you have what happened to you in that first half, where Johnny Hekker obviously gets the first down on the fake field goal, and you have that go. You lose it twice. You lose it on the spot, and you lose it on replay. Obviously that set them back, and that was a good lesson that when you have some things beyond your control go against you in a football game, you can't let that. I certainly felt like that affected them in the next 5 to 10 minutes when they just got they let it get out of hand in the moments after that controversial call, controversial spot, controversial replay decision, and so I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned out of Sunday. It's just unfortunate that they have to lose a significant tiebreaker to learn those lessons. That's what they're really to me, the loss it's not a big deal, but losing the head-to-head tiebreaker with the Saints is a big deal.
Yeah, Rams fans are definitely going to have to be they're going to have to be fans of the Bengals, the Falcons, the Panthers twice, and the Steelers, because the Saints actually do have quite a difficult road, but they're good enough to win every single one of those games.
Yeah. They'll lose it. That's why I said they got to run the table. They're going to lose a game.
Oh, they definitely will. And if the Rams go 15-1, they're clinching, number one in the NFC. I don't think we're going to see two 15-1 teams. But if we do, then that means the Saints get it, and that would be one of the worst breaks in playoff history, I think, because how many times, I don't think, if any, have you seen 15-1 and 15-1 in the same conference? I just don't think you would see that, but I think there's a reason we haven't seen it, and I don't know if that's going to start anytime soon. But, Joe, that was
it's really hard to do, especially in this NFC.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. But that was me kind of, starting off a little optimistic. Now I get into the game a little bit. So
yeah, let's hear your pessimism. Let's hear what did you see?
Well, first off, I gotta say the officials were absolutely terrible, and I say that because I was just in LA with you, and I saw the Packers game in person. I can tell you right now, that was the best officiated game I've seen in quite a long time. I thought people complaining about the Jair Alexander jersey grabbing were just, they were complaining because it was working, but he wasn't even really grabbing the jersey of Brandon Cooks. That's just great coverage. Again, being completely unbiased, Jair Alexander played one of the best games at cornerback I've seen in a while. So the fact that the refs let guys, quote-unquote, get away with one, to me, that's not really the issue. You're allowing the game to play out. You're allowing guys to, play their style of football, within the rules. If it's obvious, throw the flag. But none of it was really obvious. No guys were really getting, their jersey ripped and tugged in one direction or anything like that. And so I thought, the Packers game was very well officiated. There may have been, they missed a hold on Donald. Okay, I'm getting used to that. They miss a hold on Donald every single game, and I'd say more than one.
Every play.
But you can't call a hold every single time. It's like John Madden. You could call a hold on every play. He said that. That's the thing. You can't just call a hold every time. So, with that being said, this official crew, albeit there's 4 penalties thrown on the Rams, 2 on the Saints, it's not a huge disparity. But there were 2 key flags that really stood out to me that the Rams did not get in return. And that's when I start to have an issue. Because if you're having guys actually taking over games, illegally, that's when you have to get involved. And also, when you set a precedent early on where you're going to get Marcus Peters with 2 ticky-tack holding or pass interference, illegal contact penalties, you have to hold that end of the bargain on the other side of the field. And to me, I didn't see that. I saw Marcus Peters got ticky-tack calls early on, 2 of them, like bang-bang right away on Michael Thomas. And I saw Brandon Cooks on 4th down with the game on the line get absolutely mauled by Eli Apple. And that's not the first time I saw that. I saw that Robert Woods is trying to make a play on the ball. Eli Apple comes in. I'm now picking on Eli Apple, and I apologize to Eli, but he's the one that really stood out to me. I get, maybe it's a bang-bang play, but the ball, before it even gets there, Eli Apple hits Robert Woods. That's a flag. And you're going to call that on the other side, then you got to call it on the other side. But had they not thrown those flags on Marcus Peters, then it's a 2-2 split, and we don't have these. Well, people are always going to complain, but I'm not going to complain because you've shown me that, all right, we're not going to throw that today, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. Be consistent, and really to allow to call those at the beginning of the game, to ultimately extend the first drive of the game for a touchdown. Let's not forget they went on 4th down. It was funny how, Joe Buck said they rolled all over this Rams defense. Well, actually, they held them to a 4th down, and the Saints went for it, and they got it. But right. I will say, that penalty on, Marcus Peters with Michael Thomas to extend the drive really upset me. But it upset me more at the end of the game when, Goff is throwing right to Cooks. And, like I said, he got mauled. Sean McVay, who you don't often see him really complain about the refs. Right. But, he went right up to the official and was like, how is that not holding? We're not asking for pass interference, but how is that not holding? That's a 5-yard penalty, and that's a 1st down automatically by rule. That's what he was doing. So at least call it fair on both sides. But I guess that's why they call it home cooking. Anyway, moving on, because I don't want to talk about the officials the whole time. The defense, Joe, I don't know if you saw, this one play sticks out in my mind, and it is, as great as Wade Phillips has been at making adjustments in the second half, for the love of God, I don't even know what he called. It was a 3-man rush on 3rd and 10. And, or so I thought it was going to be. Aaron Donald drops into coverage. So you have 2 guys rushing.
I missed this one.
It's Brockers and Sue. And it's like they're playing this soft zone, but guys aren't even in the correct zone. You could tell this is just a broken play from the start. They leave Michael Thomas wide open over the middle. Breeze converts a 3rd and 10. Right. Like, I saw so much of that. But, that was one play that just really stuck out in my head because it was like they ran they did a 2-man rush on a 3rd and 10 in a pivotal moment.
There's probably a broken play or you're trying to give them some weird look and you end up kind of psyching yourself out.
Yeah. But, I gotta say, because Marcus Peters, like you said, is getting absolutely mauled. And I'm kind of right up there with people in saying I think Marcus Peters has to be demoted. I don't know if he has to be benched, but I don't want Marcus Peters covering the best guy in the field because he's proven this year he can't do it. Devontae Adams ate him alive. Michael Thomas had his best game of his career. So really what I look at is Marcus Peters this year as somebody that was considered a top 5 corner by many, but coming into the season that the Rams traded for, has not been able to cover the guys at the cream of the crop. And to me, I think they need to start using their best corner who's healthy right now, and that's Nickel Ruby-Coleman. I know he's 5'7", but he's feisty. And you saw it. He covered, on the outside last year. He started a few games. I think they might have to do that. The size advantage stinks. I'm not glad about the size advantage. They don't really have a big physical corner, that's anywhere near Marcus Peters. But they're going to have to figure out something if he doesn't get it together, especially this week, against Seattle. This could be an absolute blowout. This could be Marcus Peters getting his act together and everything. But we're really going to need to see some improvement this Sunday. So that's, Marcus Peters. LaMarcus Joyner, to me, has played himself completely out of the lineup.
Ooh.
I don't know how you don't give Blake Countess a shot. I mean, Blake Countess has played very well on the special teams unit. He's had Marquis as well. But Marquis plays. I'm just saying, Blake Countess has registered less than 30 snaps on the season. I'd like to see him get more involved. Mark Barron does not fit Wade Phillips' scheme, and not even a little bit. I don't really. There are a lot of interesting linebackers upcoming in this draft. I cannot imagine they keep Mark Barron. And the thing that is saddening is I really like Mark Barron, and I think he actually fits Greg Williams' scheme more. I just don't know if he's just not translating well to Wade's scheme. And I said that last year. This year, now coming off that brutal injury, it just, I don't know if it's ever going to get better. And I would make the argument to play Bryce Hager, who's actually in limited snaps, had some really nice production, has thrown out some really good reps on film. And it also shows on PFF. He has like an 80 grade. He's the highest graded linebacker in limited opportunities. Corey Littleton, he's still playing well. That was more of a down game for Corey Littleton, but you're still looking at one of the best players on a unit. I just think, to me, the biggest things here, Marcus Peters' long-term future, because he's got to get it together before the Rams can actually justify paying him. LaMarcus Joyner, we joked about this off air, whether he might actually be he might have gone from, wow, he's a top 5 safety to, wow, the Rams might be able to sign him for cheap, or they might not want to sign him at all. And then Mark Barron, who's got a big cap number, I believe it's like $8-9 million up there. There's just no way they bring him back after this year. And that linebacker spot, I don't know who's going to take over it, but they're going to replace him. And that's, to me, that's what I'm seeing on this defense. I'm seeing Ndamukong Suh, they might bring him back next year. They might not. But the guys that I can tell you right now off of performance, Peters is in hot water, needs to get it together. LaMarcus Joyner's really struggling, and Mark Barron is just really struggling as well. He had a good game in Green Bay, did not look any bit like he did in Green Bay against the Saints. So that's those are my takeaways on the defensive side. The offensive side, I thought, what can you say against this offense? I mean, they put up 35 points. At times they look unstoppable, but I'll say this. Goff missed some key throws on the last drive before the Saints scored and made it kind of a rout. I thought that, Goff missed some throws. At the same time, I felt like we got a little bit of Jared Goff from the Minnesota Vikings game. And that's what really excited me, because I felt like the Rams were going to win this football game when I saw how good Jared Goff looked. But at the same time, he still had a couple of those throws that were not so great. The Rams got away from the running game a little bit. They started off pounding the number 1 rush defense in the league, and it's like the Saints locked up, and the Rams saw a little bit of it and were like, nope, not going to do that. We're going to use Robert Woods, we're going to use Cooper Kupp, we're going to use Brandon Cooks. I can't say I blame them, as well as Gerald Everett, who got involved in this passing game. And, I think I'll say this. We're talking about performance issues. I think John Sullivan is really having a hard time. And it's really noticeable, because it's not Tim Barnes' level of bad, where everyone was bad on the offensive line 3 years ago, and you just watch Tim Barnes, and you're like, this is the worst center I've ever seen. But I mean, John Sullivan, when you watch all these guys like Whitworth and Havenstein and Blythe and Saffold, Sullivan sticks out so easily as the worst one on this, and it's not even close. And he really struggled in this game. How many times did you see the middle get absolutely blown up? I mean, I was confused as to why they didn't pitch it to Gurley when they ran it, or, give him a little bit of an outside zone run to the left. Or I mean, they ran right up the middle, or, Goff would face pressure right up the middle. It's 2 weeks in a row where John Sullivan has gotten absolutely blasted, and it's just becoming an issue, I think. Because you have 4 guys that are really holding it together, but it just takes that one guy. And while there's chemistry with Goff and Sullivan, I just think his play has been, lackluster to say the least. So those are my takeaways, and we'll get into a little bit more of it. But I want to hear any thoughts you have left about the game, because I think I'm worried I stole your thunder there.
No, I offensively, I think you continue to see, Jared Goff kind of show up in big games. You got to be, I think the number one, takeaway, from this game, positive, on the positive side of the ledger for Rams fans has to be that another big game, another tremendous performance with some, absolutely huge throws by Jared Goff. And, you got to like the fact that Cooper Kupp, when we saw that the injury in Denver, everybody's heart stopped, because he thought that was a potential season-changing injury. You thought it, looked like, one of those moments that you're always going to remember about this year. And that was, later on, you're going to say, that was the moment that everything started to go downhill. You lose a player like that. But absolutely tremendous that he's able to, that he escaped a significant injury. He misses a couple of weeks, comes back, looks like himself, makes one of the plays of the season to complete the comeback. Again, I mentioned it earlier, to come back from 21 down, against that team in that place is just ridiculous. And, you have to, no matter what happens in the playoffs this year, you're going to have confidence in this team until quadruple zeros, because, they're dangerous. They're dangerous when they're ahead. They're dangerous when they're behind. They're showing you something. Talking about big time throws from Jared Goff, and he got bailed out. What was the Tyler Higbee's drop? They end up scoring on that drive, right? It was like the next play or right after that, they got in the end zone, right? You remember that?
When he dropped the pass in the end zone?
Yeah, where Goff throws an absolute laser beam through traffic, while he's getting hit. Just an absolute, ridiculous throw, and it bounces off Tyler Higbee's hands.
You sound so angry in your voice. You're like, how could you?
I mean, we talked earlier
that?
about this. I mean, when somebody makes a play like that, it's almost like, you have this like ridiculous fast break, and the guy with the easiest play, the ball touches all 5 players, and there's somebody like throws a bounce pass through somebody's legs, and behind the back, and then the guy misses the bunny at the end. And the thing about it is, Tyler Higbee, I don't think he's a good enough blocker for the lack of production in the passing game so far. People talk about how he's a good run blocker. When I watch the film, I don't think he's a plus run blocker. He's certainly not a good pass protector. And the drops in the red zone, I mean, it's his 3rd year now. This was an absolutely huge year for Tyler Higbee. You got to make that play. He needs to catch that ball. And how many years now have I said that the Rams needed a veteran, dependable tight end that would add value to this team, both in the passing game and as a run blocker? And I mean, we're getting to the point where that position, you thought maybe this team was sticking with 11 personnel, simply because they were winning in it, simply because, that was their best group of players. But it's also because they're hiding what they have at tight end. I love Gerald Everett. I don't think I don't look at them as playing the same position, because Everett's more of a pass catcher. He's more of an F or an H. He plays some fullback. Whereas Tyler Higbee's your Y. Tyler Higbee's your tight end, and that is going to be, if he doesn't start making some plays, and being a consistent member of somebody that Jared Goff can throw to and know that he's going to catch that ball. Then they're going to need to think about upgrading that position in the offseason. And then other aspects, you knew it was going to be a tough matchup, simply because the Saints have an underrated offensive line, one of the better offensive lines in football. They're a really good team against the run. So they were going to have what it takes to kind of, minimize, as much as you can Todd Gurley in the rush game. And I thought that, the Rams defensive front got exposed at times. I think I don't think Ndamukong Suh had a very good game. I know you liked the way Dante Fowler looked. I didn't see a whole lot from Dante, and even Sean today mentioned that he liked the way Dante Fowler looked. I didn't. I saw him getting buried on key third downs. I saw him getting taken out in one-on-one matchups. I don't. He got in there on a couple hits. He shared some. But I wasn't exactly impressed. But I do like the fact that you bring in Okoronkwo now, and now you've got two guys that can kind of share that responsibility on a week-in, week-out basis of injecting some life into the edge rushing pass game. And so we'll see where that takes us. But again, I would also, if I had to do like a 3-up, 3-down scenario, I mean, LaMarcus Joyner, I went to the Caneo Valley Rams group's weekly watch party. First time I've done it at the park in Oak Park, which is kind of right next to where it's pretty close to where the Rams have their facility. And at one point, somebody leans over to me and says, LaMarcus Joyner is costing himself a lot of money. I think the exact words were, "We're not giving LaMarcus Joyner $11 million next year." And I'm like, LaMarcus Joyner, he may be on this team next year, but it's not going to be, especially at that position. The fact that he's making $11 million at free safety, it says a lot about what the type of year he had last year. He's never going to make $11 million in this league again in 1 year. And part of that is nobody's paying safeties. Another part of that is that he does not look like the player he was last year. So, I mean, I didn't think he played well. Obviously, Peters, they're asking him to do a lot. They're asking him to be Marcus Peters in the past, and he just hasn't. They're giving him a guy. I mean, Mike Thomas is an unbelievable player. Certainly one of the top couple receivers in this league at times, especially on Sunday. He looks like the best receiver in football. I'd probably take, Beckham over him, but not too many other players. Beckham,
I take
Hopkins.
Thielen.
Yeah, Thielen. And I'd probably take Thomas. But yeah, so I mean, he was unbelievable, and think about it, he's an LA guy. He's from the Valley. He went to Taft High, I think, and for him to have that sort of performance against kind of LA's new team, he knew everybody back home was watching. I think part of why he had such a big game was he was showing out for his hometown, and it was quite a performance. The other thing is, you talk about Wade Phillips and scheme. They did hang Peters out to dry a lot with him. They gave Peters that player and said, do it. And when he's doing what he does, what was it, 12 catches and 15 targets? When he's doing that, there's got to be some sort of adjustment at some point. You need to get somebody else in there to give him some help and start doubling. And what was it online today? Somebody had the look on the long touchdown, and it was it was press man with no safety help, right? So when Peters was beaten, he was dead.
And
when
he wasn't ready.
Yeah, he wasn't ready for the play.
Yeah, he's trying to make an adjustment because there's a guy out of that. That's the thing that sucks about that play, because when you watch it, there's a lot that goes on, and Peters, I forget who was out of position, but he's like, "Come over here." There's no one on this guy, so he's waving this guy over, trying to get his attention, and they snap the ball because that's Breeze right there. That's him being. Yeah, I mean that's not easy to see that. You're checking out the whole defense and everything. He somehow is able to read that, and he hikes the ball. I mean, to me, that I don't know. Like that's the thing. That's the cerebral nature of Drew Brees that makes him so scary. And man, they are just such a balanced team. I know that they gave up 35 to the Rams, but their defense looks so much better than it did at the beginning of the year. And that's without their first-round pick that they traded 2 first-rounders for, Marcus Davenport. Yeah. And, I mean, Marshawn Lattimore. Because there's a Marcus Lattimore, the running back for the 49ers. That screwed me up. Marshawn Lattimore isn't playing anywhere near what he was capable of last year. And, they still look fine. I mean, they added Eli Apple, and I thought he had an interesting game. I don't think, a lot of these corners, they really, I thought they played off their men a lot. I thought it was a ballsy throw. I think, what was it, Goff threw into 4 defenders. He threw, I think I tweeted out, Joe, it was it's like Nolan Ryan. Have you seen Goff throw a ball that hard in any game? He threw that one pass, and it was like Nolan Ryan throwing a football.
He was trying to throw it right through him. The PFF grades. Donald had 7 pressures, 4 hits, 3 hurries, and so he was right there. Although everybody was sub 80. Donald with a 79. They had Sue as the second best graded defensive player. Troy Hill was 3rd. It's one of those games where Troy Hill's really been kind of like good game, bad game, good game, bad game. I mean, I think he gave up 1 catch for 4 yards. Part of that was the fact that they had, they basically gave Thomas to Peters. Peters' numbers were. He gave up 7 receptions for 146 yards and the touchdown. Johnson was the other. Johnson Joyner. So everybody in that secondary. Oh, Hill gave up a touchdown too as a 4-yard. So all 4 starters in that secondary gave up touchdown passes yesterday. But that's part of going in that venue, in that place. You're going to give up plays. The bottom line is you need negative plays. You need sacks. You need turnovers, and that's what where that defense really lets you down last night. Yeah. So Peters gave up 7 catches on 9 targets, and Littleton 6 catches on 7 targets. He had a rough day. So yeah, the guys who PFF panned, Peters, Johnson, Barron, Littleton, Joyner. Everybody else was decent.
Yeah, I actually, by the way, while we were discussing that, Jared Goff threw a incomplete pass deep left to Tyler Higbee on 2nd and 8, New Orleans 18. That was the rocket that you were talking about, that great throw that was dropped. 3rd and 8, Malcolm Brown had that crazy touchdown. And
God, yeah, we got to talk about that. That gets forgotten.
Malcolm know.
Brown.
I've never seen anything like it.
I guarantee you he got drug tested after the game. That was such an incredible play. He got drug tested after the game. That was such an awesome play. I mean, you're going to see that even a loss, that thing can't get forgotten. To stay in bounds, the body control. He is such.
That was Kamara-esque.
Dude, remember how Malcolm Brown looked slow and heavy-legged the last couple of years?
Yeah.
This year, I don't know what he's done in the offseason, but he's turned himself into a legit. It's almost like, give Todd some rest and get Malcolm involved. I mean, you could really do some two-back stuff, get him in the slot a little bit. I mean, he's become a player. He was their number one rated player from PFF offensively, or the entire team. He was the number one rated player on the team. He only played 6 snaps, but
he has a lot less snaps than Gurley, but he actually has a higher rating than Gurley. He would be the 6th running back by position. So that, I mean, I always said to my friends, they all like different teams. I'm like, Malcolm Brown could be your starter. Like, who's Malcolm Brown? Mm-hmm. Then they watch him. Like, yep, that's Malcolm Brown right there. And, the funny thing is, Mr. Joe Curley over here in our Dynasty League was like, ooh, I got John Kelly. John Kelly, my man. He is going to reap the benefits. John Kelly has not suited up, and we're going into week 10. So,
well, I only did that because I was trying to feed him to your dad, who's the Gurley on him. I was trying to get a draft pick out of that. No, I have in my big Dynasty League. I've got Malcolm Brown for $1, and I like that.
Wow,
that's a good. I've had him for a couple of years now for $1 on a contract. He's probably like one. I've had that contract, but I'm trying to pull up the pressures allowed. Who gave up pressures on that line? You're talking about Sullivan. Sullivan was a 52.
Ugh. That's not good.
He gave up a hit and 2 hurries. They didn't give up a ton of pressure. Saffold gave up 3. Whitworth was the one that gave up the most pressure, actually. But that was just the matchup of who he was dealing with. But how about Roger with where he gets the flag there at the end of the half?
That killed his grade, by the way. Killed his grade.
There was some kind of you don't really see him as ever act out like that, and he's one of the veteran kind of cool-headed guys on this team, and so that was kind of out of character, especially recently.
Yeah, he did apologize for that, because he's like, I should have put my hands on Goff, and that was strange. That was definitely some strange.
He was the one. If you look at the PFS pass blocking numbers, Saffold was in the 40s, and then Sullivan was 64. Even Gurley gave up a hurry. That's very rare.
Yeah,
that Gurley gives up anything in pass blocking. Those are the guys that had rough days. Higbee had a 50 grade in run blocking and a 71 in pass blocking, and then everyone else had a decent day, pass blocking.
I gotta say, just because I don't know if you were on the podcast when I said this, I am so happy that Corey Littleton has turned into Clay Matthews. He can play inside backer. They were using him on the edge in this game. I mean, he didn't have his best game, but he still was able to get some pressure. He should have had a sack. There was a really nice props to Alvin Kamara, because everyone just assumes running backs like him that are kind of smaller. They're not 6'1", 225, Gurley, Elliott. But Kamara had 3 touchdowns, and he had one of the best blocks of the game when Littleton's coming off the edge, and he gets past Kamara, but Breeze has already let go of the ball. And that was a pivotal moment as well, because that was kind of the tone setter. I mean, that was their second score of the game, and Littleton had a free run at the quarterback, and Kamara kind of came out of nowhere, made a really nice block. But to go back to what I was saying, I just love the way they're using him like Clay Matthews. Remember it was 2 years ago, they tried the Clay Matthews inside linebacker experiment, and people said it didn't really work that well. I disagree. I just think he's better on the edge, but it did actually work. He played pretty well, and the Rams just have an absolute stud in him, and they've found a lot of talent on this roster. But I just love it when they're able to find those guys on defense, like especially an undrafted rookie free agent who has a story like he does. I mean, coming from Washington, didn't graduate, so he had to sit out until just about the middle of OTAs. To me, that is that's huge. When you're able to find guys like that, you're doing a good job.
Rams had 2 drops yesterday. Want to guess who had the 2 drops?
Let's see. Who had the 2 drops? Well, Higbee we know had 1.
Higbee had 1. Who had the other?
And the other one, I'm gonna say it was Cooks.
It was Everett. Tight end position had both of the drops.
Oh, you tweeted this. And then that guy's like,
yes,
well, now we know why they
Everett.
don't target tight ends. I was like, because Goff throws low? Goff, didn't throw a good pass to Everett.
It wasn't a great ball.
I wouldn't charge him with the... That's not right.
And then the guys who led the team in first downs, which is actually a stat I track when I cover games, Cooks and Woods both had 5 first downs apiece, which I think should be a fantasy. I think first downs achieved should be a fantasy category, or get you some points. Should be an extra point.
Ooh, I gotta. I'll email myfantasyleague.com and we'll get that thing going. Oh,
it's probably there. They got everything. Keep going. Sorry,
it's true. So kind of random, but kind of not. When I met Robert Woods, I asked him if I could call him Bobby, and he said yes. And he said as long as I don't tell his wife that I call him Bobby, she hates that name. Nice. So I was like, wow, there you go, Bobby. There you go, Bobby Woods.
I think your secret is safe between the two of you.
Well, I was pretty hyped because he actually knew who I was, which I was not expecting. See, Joe.
Look at you. Look at you.
Well,
my little boy's all grown up.
Well, after the Giants game, and he said he'd come on the podcast, which is cool.
Ooh, that'll be a good get for you.
Yeah. After the Giants game, see, I didn't end up meeting Robert Woods. The funny thing is, I spoke with him, right? I'm getting a picture with Todd Gurley. Robert Woods, the bus is honking, they're running late. They're signing autographs, taking pictures with fans. These guys are top of the line. I mean, that's why I hate throwing shade at Tyler Higbee, because he was one of the guys that stayed late. Same with Longacre and Gerald.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have you could hear they're pissed. They're come on, get on the bus. We got to go back to L.A. And this is New York. So they were really cool about, signing autographs and hanging out with the fans and getting to talk with them a little bit. And I'm getting a picture with Gurley and talking with him for a sec. And then Robert Woods kind of runs over to just get a bunch of quick photos and everything. He's going down the line. And I see him out of the corner of my eye. I mean, he's one of my favorite players. So, I go over to get a picture with him, and now they're screaming for them to get to the bus. So you have Gurley, Goff, Hecker just running back to the team bus, and Woods is about to take a picture, and my phone dies. And so
I remember you telling me this story.
Yeah. So Blaine goes to get a picture with him. He's like, man, I gotta go. And that was the last time I saw him. I was able to talk to him, and that. But then I met him at this executive IT meeting that all I can describe was I should not have been there. I just didn't belong. They're like, oh, so you have guys from HP and Workday, and I'm like, oh yeah, I work full time selling window shades, and I have Downtown Rams, and then I meet Robert Woods, and he's like, yeah, I know who you are. I follow your stuff, and I read your articles on me. I appreciate you. He knew me. I was just like, what? I wasn't expecting it. So I thought it was a cool little tidbit I'd throw out there. Really cool meeting Robert Woods, and man, is he not Mr. Reliable? I swear. Yeah. If Goff needs a first down, you're throwing to him.
I just don't know, probably you, but there's not too many Rams fans that saw the number saw the number they gave him in free agency, 18 months ago or 20 months ago, whenever it was, and said, all right, yeah, let's pay Robert Woods X, what is it, 7 or whatever it is, million a year. And, not a lot of people were happy with that contract, although I'm sure a lot of SC fans like the player. But what he's done in this system, he's now, a value. I mean, he's worth a heck of a lot more than that contract. He's outplayed, he's been worth the money and more. He's been absolutely unbelievable, and just a tremendous job by him. Tremendous job by Les Snead and Sean McVay to make that happen and make it work. And you've also got a leader, like you said. You got a guy who's willing, to take a second with the fans and take photos and meet with people, and he's invested, and it's just been, there hasn't been a way in which that move wasn't a tremendous move. He's a leader in the locker room. He's a leader in the community. He's quietly, but he's really been a tremendous add, and he's a key part of the reason why this team's 8-1.
I agree, and it's funny because, when you say people were against paying him, they were so against paying him, and
they were shocked it was so much money.
I had this conversation with Robert Woods, and I was telling him, I'm like, you were worth every single penny. And I remember I wrote a piece about it, and I said before, free agency had started and there was any rumored interest or anything, I was like, he's the perfect fit. Because for people that want Pierre Garçon, he's Garçon at 24 years old. He might be better than Garçon. So there's a chance that he's better than Garçon right now, and you just don't know it because he was with the Buffalo Bills with the number 1 rush offense 4 years straight. And they had Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods, and they just didn't use them. So I kept saying, I'm like, this guy's a steal. And sure enough, the Rams made that move, and I was enthralled with their free agency, because to go out and get him and then sign Andrew Whitworth, that is nothing like a signing that I expected. And you just knew it was a changing of the guard. You knew that they were a different team, and they were serious about competing. And I know people wanted the big-name receiver, but I hate to break it to you, Robert Woods is turning into a big-name receiver. He's now the 5th rated wide receiver by Pro Football Focus, and man, he really I don't know if I shared this with you, Joe, but we did a Q&A with him at this event, and I posted a little bit of it, but man, he was fun because you asked him anything and he was going to answer it. And it was like my dad asked him how, what the difference was, because we live in New York. He's like, what's the difference between Buffalo and LA? And he's like, well, I didn't know what snow was. But wow. I thought the really funny thing was how he spared no time at all to praise the Rams' technology and absolutely trash the Bills' technology. And what I mean by that is one of the HP guys asked him, what is it? How do you guys use the new technology? How do you guys how does sports technology work with the Rams and everything? He's like, well, with the Bills, it was almost like they were behind. They were old school, and they actually didn't take advantage of it. And the Rams, they chart out everything. They chart out how fast you run on your best day, and if you're not there, you need to get there. They chart out, last time you ate, the last time you ran this fast, if you ran fast, like how high you can jump, all this stuff. So it was crazy because he's going through the line, and then they're like, well, what about Buffalo? And he's like, man, I can't even tell you, because it's like I don't even remember. It was that it was that old school. I think they wrote things down on paper, like like it was it was pretty crazy. But it's funny. We went down this rabbit hole because I mentioned Woods, and then I piggybacked off you, because that's normally how this thing goes. But there was just so much content. I couldn't help but get some video, like how you would have done. Because if you were there, you would have gotten some video, like those little Twitter videos that you get, locker room stuff. I just thought, man,
Sure.
this is some gold content. So really cool stuff, and I figured I'd share it.
Try to bring, that's what we do. We try to bring people in that locker room. You're trying to bring the viewer into, that event, and because not everybody can kind of be, in our shoes in that scenario, and certainly everyone now knows that conversing with Bobby is a good time.
No, I definitely. Let's see here. So, Joe, we talked about pretty much everything that has ever happened. But we didn't really discuss... Well, I guess we discussed really everything, but Okoronkwo promoted, all that. We talked a little bit about that. Trayvon Young, unfortunately, was waived. Do you see Okoronkwo contributing this Sunday against Seattle?
Well, I don't think they would have. Did they have to? Was now the time when they had to activate him by? Did they wait as long? So you don't really know.
So they could
activate him.
Yeah,
he could be inactive. I think a lot of it's just going to, be determined by how's he practicing, how's Longacre doing. I imagine Trayvon Young, if he clears waivers, will be a practice squad guy.
Yeah, and that'll be all she wrote for, I think, I would say probably Javon Roland Jones, who I like, but, that's normally how it goes. You have your placeholder at edge, and then...
Trayvon played and made plays. I mean, he had the pick or the fumble recovery, whatever it was in Denver.
I don't know how you cut him.
Or just San Francisco, wherever the hell it was. But, I think, I think Okoronkwo is going to be a mystery until he gets out there. Remember, this is a guy who we haven't seen since he was a Sooner. He hurt himself in the part of OTAs where we're not there, so we've never seen him. I've never laid eyes on him, in pads at least. And it's going to be, I imagine, and I'm sure they don't. It's not like he played in preseason. So it's a mystery for them a lot, too, even though he's been out there practicing. And so I think there's a chance he is inactive this way. I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket. But I do like the fact that they did make the move. One of the big, good reasons to make the Fowler move is that now, you've got multiple options at that position. You can keep throwing bodies, at that problem and hope one of them sticks, one of them gets hot, whether it's Fowler now or Okoronkwo by the playoffs, or maybe Longacre feels better, by the end of the year and he gets hot. I mean, I think that's all they're trying to do is kind of just, get as much, get as many options as possible at the position and just kind of hope something clicks.
Yeah, I actually compared Ogbonnia Okoronkwo to that of Carl Lawson, who unfortunately is out for the year for the Bengals. But you're talking about that 4th, 5th round guy that fell due to an injury. There were injury concerns with Okoronkwo. I'll say there were serious injury concerns with Carl Lawson, who I actually wanted the Rams to draft. But with Okoronkwo, the reason he fell in the draft, I've had people ask me this, it's really based on the 40 time and the fact that he's just such a pass rusher and that he struggles mightily as a run defender and his discipline to set the edge. He is relentless with his pursuit, but that's an issue because you can be relentless, like Aaron Donald's relentless, but he's controlled. You can't, like, he can be out of whack and where he's not in his, the right positioning, and you're going to get gashed.
You're giving up the edge, yeah. When you
so
the edge
that's one of his biggest things, I would say.
One of the things I think they're going to probably do is Longacre will be, early down, will be run defender, and then, they'll, either Fowler or Obo will be the third down, will be the pass rush specialist. That's what they're looking at, I think.
And you know what I'll do? If I'm an offense, I'm going to run a delayed handoff. The Rams have not showed this year that they can stop a delayed handoff. They've gotten absolutely gashed every time I've watched it. So I would take advantage of that. You have, two guys in that are third down pass rushers. You know what's coming. That's the problem. It kind of becomes really, it becomes predictable. So Fowler's actually turned into a better run defender. He's not great, but he has gotten better. Okoronkwo is going to need some serious work because he can be. It's just the discipline. And that, that takes time, but that is something that can be fixed. I just think, watching him at Oklahoma, he would get a sack where, he was just relentless, break through a double team. Then the next play, you see them go with an outside zone run, and where he's the guy on the outside that needs to stay, has to be committed to stopping the run, setting the edge. And because, the running back is reading his blockers, he sees Okoronkwo do an inside spin move where he gets kind of trapped between the right tackle and the right guard. That leaves that area wide open. And that's the thing you try to explain to, the casual, follower of this league is that, just having a bunch of pass rushers, it's great and all if they can get to the quarterback, but you need to be well defined. And it's almost, I had my friend on here, Cole Thompson, and he said it best. We got to move away from the edge rusher, and we got to talk more about the edge defender. We really need to start calling them edge defenders because that's really what they are. They aren't just rushers. You can find a rusher, and that's why the Rams went out and got Dante Fowler. But at the end of the day, if you can't play both ways on the defense, you're going to be a liability half of the time. That's the scary thing. So you got to really pick your poison.
It's a good call. Very good.
Yeah, and then I would also make that argument with Bruce Irvin, who I want to ask you, does this rule out the possibility of the Rams pursuing free agent Bruce Irvin, who was actually, I know it was announced on Friday, Joe, but he's not going to be a free agent until tomorrow, unless he, if he doesn't, if he clears waivers, because he was released today. Right. So, yeah, so that'll be interesting. I think that they'll consider it, but I think Okoronkwo kind of stomps on that.
Well, I think you got to look at the money. You got to look at the Fowler move meant they had to shed a contract in Jamon, and you got to look at what type of who would have to go to add Irvin. Certainly, he was a very effective pass rusher in his day. I don't know what he looks like this year. I haven't seen a ton of Raiders games. I don't remember him doing anything in the Raider game, or in the opener in September. But I wonder what he has left. I wonder what they would have to do roster-wise to get him on there, and if they have any. Do they have any bullets left? Are they in a position to make a move like that happen? Consider, everything else that's already transpired and everything that they've moved around, and you're cutting, to activate Obo, you're cutting a decent player in Young. You might be at a position now where, Irvin's maybe doesn't improve you that much. I think that's where the decision has to come down. But and he's also been kind of, he's a Southern California guy. He went to Mount Sac. So maybe that's a positive, but you wonder, he's also been kind of a wild card. He probably would love to stick it to Seattle. But
he might want to join Seattle.
Yeah, I'm not, right? He wasn't Irvin, Bruce Irvin, he was a Seattle player originally, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he went back. Honestly, if he doesn't go to the Rams, which, before Okoronkwo, I actually felt like Irvin was going to go to the Rams. But now, the thing is, Joe, and this is really interesting to me, is that if he's willing to take the veteran minimum and you're Les Snead, don't you just grab him? Can he really hurt? He's on a veteran minimum 1-year rental deal, somebody that would be all into just winning a Super Bowl, and then you part your, you go your separate ways.
Sorry, my headset just died. I missed the last 5 seconds. Yeah, cheap. Taking Adam and losing a key player. You consider it, but yeah, I just don't know what moves are left. What could they do?
Sam Bradford.
Oh God.
Sam Bradford bone on bone is better than trotting out Sean Mannion. His knee is bone on bone, by the way.
Sam Bradford?
Yeah, that's
I would take bone on bone for $125 million. So I mean, he's at the end of his career. But you drafted a running back that was rumored to be bone on bone in the first round this year. But obviously two different positions. But
who drafted a running back bone on bone? Oh.
The Patriots drafted Sony Michel so they were looking at it like he was only, the Patriots do, when they draft players now, a lot of it they're just drafting him for the rookie contract. They're just like, okay, you're going to play for us for 4 years. We don't care if you can last a fifth. It's great. It's insane.
That is insane. They got my guy Isaiah Wynn. I mean, he ended up that I don't even want to talk about it. That really upset me, but
that was trouble.
Yeah, but that was crazy enough. I mean, if I want to be a jerk, I can say the Rams won that trade for this year because they traded the first-round pick, get Cooks.
The
Patriots don't even get anything.
The Patriots had to make 5 moves to dig themselves out from under not paying Brandon Cooks. They had to, whether it was Philip Dorsett, with Josh Gordon. They've made so many moves offensively just because losing Cooks was a big loss. And the thing about it is, you look at Brandon Cooks' film from last year with New England, you look at his film this year with the Rams, he's just in a much better place for his skill set. His speed was just not utilized well, in that offense with that quarterback. And now you've got a young, big arm quarterback who can, make, what was it, like the 52-yard gain or what, you never saw him making plays down the field in New England like he can and does in LA right now. I think he's in just a much better position for his skill set.
Yeah, well, he was in a perfect position when he was in New Orleans too. I think it's really interesting how you brought up, you bring up the Patriots, you talk about the Saints. The Rams have a Patriot-style Saints offense. It's really strange. They have the high-octane approach with the deep ball of the Saints, and they still use those quick slants, those flats that the Patriots have, they've had as a staple in their offense for years. So it's really interesting how
short intermediate. They've married the short intermediate, precision passing game with some, down the field, speed shots, and so, and then you add all the misdirection to it, all the jet sweep stuff, and that's what's been working. But really, I think it's the group of talent, whether it's an offensive line that's had a lot of success, the quarterback that continues to scratch the ceiling and break through it, and I have to say, you're probably right, probably the best receiving core in football. If they get anything out of that tight end position, never mind the MVP at the in the running back, suddenly really deep running back core. I mean, really, if they could fix the tight end position, there'd be, they'd have no weaknesses.
It'll be perfect. I'll just throw this out there before I, talk about Gerald Everett real quick. if the Giants would have traded Rhett Ellison to the Rams, because Rhett Ellison is exactly what you want. Just he has the ability. I saw him at USC. He has the ability to make a catch if he needs to, but he's solely for the blocking, and they're paying him enough, where, I mean, this guy is just one of the best at that.
That's what they need. They need a great blocking tight end who will catch the ball when it comes to him. That's exactly what they need.
So you have Rhett Ellison. You move Tyler Higbee down to third. You can make this move. You can cut Johnny Munt and just put him on the practice squad. And then Gerald Everett's your number one. And I don't think that's far-fetched, because we're about to wrap this thing up, and I'm going to leave you all with a parting... Well, Joe's going to get a chance to kind of talk a little bit about this, but really quick, PFF grades through 9 weeks have 7 Rams in the top 5. And if you had to rank, the 7 Rams that are in the top 5 for each position, I don't think anyone would say Gerald Everett. But Gerald Everett is 5th out of tight ends. Wow. He's only played 150 snaps to Higbee's 471. Is it time to start making Everett the starter? I mean, really? He has a much better run blocking grade, and you see it. Watching the games. He's actually gotten better as a blocker, and he was compared to a poor man's version of Evan Ingram. That's what people were saying in the draft. The Rams got the poor man Evan Ingram, and the knock on both of them.
Might be the better.
Yeah, the knock on both of them is that they couldn't block. Well, Everett's getting better. Ingram also got better, but Everett's getting better, and I don't know how much better of a blocker Higbee is to even justify playing him over the guy that is, in lesser opportunities, making them all count. Everett was key in even tying that thing up. That 2-point conversion, that's just a stellar heads-up play on Everett's part. How many times do you see that get stuffed? You threw a screen pass to a tight end 2 yards short of the end zone, and he has to dive straight out like he's Superman just to get in the end zone. He can't slide. He can't, try and, half, not really put all of his effort in. I mean, he literally dives and gets that. To me, I don't know. I think you're the first one that really was like, come on, Gerald Everett had the shoulder injury. You're being too hard on him. I'm like, all right, you're probably right. I'm also a bitter George Kittle fan, so there's that. But Gerald Everett, but seriously, Gerald Everett has really done a nice job this year. He deserves a lot of credit, and the Rams really have to start using him, because I think he is going to be that X factor that, a Vikings team uses Kyle Rudolph. The Chiefs use Travis Kelce. The Vikings have Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and Dalvin Cook. The Chiefs, they have all sorts of weapons. Kareem Hunt, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Sammy Watkins. He is going to be that X factor. The Rams just have to figure out that Higbee isn't a starter at this point. He is what he is, and what he is he's a backup who has the big body that you like to see as a tight end to target in the red zone. But we saw this, Joe, and you brought it up. When they needed him in the red zone, he didn't come through. He dropped the touchdown in the playoffs, a key touchdown. Also, and that was on 4th down. At some point, Gerald Everett got off to a great start, last year, and then kind of he was behind the 8 ball a little bit with the playbook and blocking wise. I feel like he's starting to put it all together. In year 3, you could be looking at a top 5 tight end for sure. I really think if they use him, it's all going to come together. You can see the issue is when you draft a guy from South Alabama who was previously at Alabama Birmingham, to me, the issue is the learning curve, because you know he can catch, he can run, but is he going to be able to adapt to the NFL speed? Is he going to be able to learn how to become a blocker? Since a lot of people were just saying he's just a bigger receiver. I think he's starting to really check those boxes, and it's time, man. Sean McVay, play your second-round pick. Play your, as everyone was calling him, Jordan Reed. Come on now. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing is I don't know if he's a starting Y yet. I mean, I like him in that F position. I like him. I think they just got to call his number more, maybe play more 12 personnel, or maybe I just think that they, I don't think either of these guys can really be trusted to block the position, tight end. And, we have seen improvement from Everett. Maybe they get to a place where McVay feels comfortable enough to really go to him and trust him, as a blocker. But, that tight end position, that's the weak link, whether it's a run play, whether it's pass protection, when part of the pass protection, that tight end position is the weak link, especially as they become more and more receiver. The skill set becomes more like a receiver. That's the place where the pressure comes from. That's the place where the play breaks down. And so I'm a broken record on this, but I would love the Red Ellison idea. I would love to get some sort of blocker in at this position, and then as a playmaker, I think the problem right now with Everett is that yes, he got slowed by the injury, but he's also there's four. We know that there's four receivers, plus multiple running backs in this team that can make plays in the pass game, and so he's not just competing against Higbee for a slice of that offensive pie. He's competing against Kupp. He's competing against Malcolm Brown. He's competing against a lot of talented players, and it's part of the that they do have an embarrassment of riches in the skill positions offensively. And Gerald still, like you said, there's a steep learning curve coming from the places that he came from, in college, and he has flashed. He was maybe their best player in the in OTAs, and he suffered that injury and it set him back. And maybe he would have had some of those big plays we saw last year out of him already this year if he hadn't had that injury. But he's had it, but he's still continuing to improve. He's still on the upswing, and I do think he's one of those guys where by the end of the season, by the time this team's in the playoffs, when they're playing some of the biggest games, those guys I'd sneaky expect to make a game changing play in the playoffs. Or at some point next year, he could, like you said, become a top 5 tight end. He's just still scratching the surface of his talent. It's all there. He just has to continue to fight and climb and grind and get there.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds, but I mean, it's good. We talked about this before the year. Tyler Higbee, it was put up or shut up time, and I think we're starting to understand what Tyler Higbee is. With Gerald Everett, we're seeing he is developing. Like, he's getting better as he's going on in his career, and that's a good sign. This isn't a team where, like, if the Rams were, they didn't have a Cooks or a Woods or a Kupp. I mean, I would make the argument if he was in the George Kittle role, he might look just as good as George Kittle as a receiver. When I get all freaked out about George Kittle, it's the fact that you let a 5th rounder go to your arch rival, and just of how great of a well-rounded player he is already. But I mean, Everett would probably match that production, I would say. And so it is a little bit of a hard thing, because you draft a guy in the 2nd round, and it's like you're not going to force feed this guy. When you have Todd Gurley, you have Cooper Kupp, you have Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, but at the same time, you don't want to just phase him out and just act like you wasted a 2nd round pick. So it's kind of that whole, conundrum to get everybody, their touches and make it all well worth it.
Yeah, I'm there with you. It's yeah, we'll see. Once again, we talked about it in the preseason. We've talked about it already. This position, it's one of the more interesting positions on the team simply because, it affects the run game, it affects the pass. You've got, young talent that we're waiting to see whether it develops, and so that's why we keep going back to this well. It's one position on the offense that you can really get some improvement in the short and the long term that can affect things as this team tries to continue to improve and, continues to beat the heck out of the NFC, and keeps barreling on towards that potential number one, seed in the playoffs.
Yeah. Real quick, Gerald Everett, 4th in receiving grade. He's 9th in all of tight ends for run blocking. Pass protection, that needs to be that definitely needs to be upgraded, but it's a good look. And honestly, if I had to tell you who's the highest pass blocker, you wouldn't even be able to guess.
Give me the name. Let's not guess.
Ricky Seals-Jones. Like, what?
Jeez. Eric Dickerson likes that one.
Yeah, he's turned into an absolute stud as a pass blocker. And then Luke Stocker, the guy that just played on Monday Night Football for the Titans. But, now we're talking about, fringe tight ends. So I think that's going to do it.
So it's time to go to bed. Exactly.
Man.
Anytime we get to Ricky Seals-Jones, it's time to hit the sack.
Well, not even Luke Stocker was the nail in the coffin.
How about that? Any Cardinal, any Arizona Cardinal at this point.
Man, I'm so disappointed. I was so wrong about them. I wanted them to be the number 2 team in the NFC West because I just wanted to be right. And man, when Jimmy Garoppolo went down, it looked like I had a chance.
So much about the fact that I nailed them.
You did.
The team I was wrong on was Seattle. I had the Arizona nailed, but the team I was wrong about was Seattle. They've been better. I thought they were toast, and good for them. They're continuing to fight, and we'll see how they look this week.
Did you see them this past week? They had a chance to tie that game on a free play, right? They had a free play
going on during the.
Oh my God! They had a free play at the goal line. Russell Wilson throws it right into David, what's his name? David Moore's hands.
Moore.
He drops it in the back of the end zone. There was 0 seconds left. There was a penalty. So it was one of those rare free play.
Oh, an untimed down?
Yeah. So it was, he could have run it. So it's probably killing him. But they were down by 8. So, they had a chance to tie that thing up after it really looked like Russell Wilson throwing the pick 6, put the nail in the coffin for Seattle, but it doesn't matter if Seattle's coming off a loss because when you're going up against a Rams team coming off a loss like that, I feel bad for you. So this could be quite the game. But credit to Pete Carroll for even getting this team competitive because I just don't look at this roster and think they're all that great.
Yeah, it's crazy how good they've been. They fix the offensive line, they fix the defense. I mean, they're not bad. They're not bad, dude.
And now the Rams will drop 60 on them. But that is going to do it. For Jake Ellenbogen, he is Joe Curley. I will be back. I don't know if Joe will be back. We're both really busy, but I'll be back for the Thursday. I think it'll be Thursday. We'll do a preview for the Seattle game because all games must have previews, and Seattle's actually better than I expected. So stay tuned for that, and you guys take care. Later.